The maritime traffic jam is clearing. The United Nations has begun evacuating ships from Hormuz, and hundreds of vessels are now passing through a safe passage in the Strait of Hormuz near the coast of Oman. But the Revolutionary Guards are coming out against the new shipping route in the strait, declaring that it is an unacceptable move, and once again threatening to close the strait. Trump, on the other hand, claims that Iran is not collecting fees from ships passing through the Strait of Hormuz. And at the same time, Iran is demanding the release of $24 billion. Chaos in Iran's banks, a cyber attack, or a collapse they're trying to hide. What's happening? The United States eliminated an ISIS terrorist in Syria, and the United States military announced that it will continue to root out remnants of the organization. And right now, it appears that the Revolutionary Guards are in a multi-front collapse. You will not believe what is happening in Gaza, in Lebanon, and Iran. We will bring you the full regional picture very shortly. And will El-Julani, or Ashara, the president of Syria, fight against Hezbollah in Lebanon? We will bring you Iran and Turkey's nightmare scenario very shortly. Targeted elimination, the head of the Iranian hacker group, Handala, was eliminated. And the Hamas terrorist organization is also identifying an opportunity and wants to exploit the negotiations between Iran and the United States, exactly like the Hezbollah terrorist organization is trying to do in Lebanon. And we will also explain why Iran is still struggling to sell oil despite the United States' decision to temporarily exempt Iranian oil from sanctions, and how this situation could turn China's independent refineries into Tehran's main customer, and perhaps it's only one. I'm Yair Pinto. Mati Shoshani will not be with us today because he's currently flying to a conference on anti-Semitism. So we'll wish him success and pray for him. We are here on Boots on the Ground, bringing you the whole truth about what's happening in Israel and also the whole truth about what's happening in our neighborhood, the Middle East. Today is June 25th, so let's begin. Iran's Revolutionary Guards published an unusual warning this morning on Thursday. Any safe passage through the Strait of Hormuz will be allowed only through the shipping lanes approved by Tehran. According to the organization, the new route that was announced without coordination with Iran is unacceptable and dangerous. The statement emphasized that vessels that do not follow the instructions will be dealt with. This threat comes against the background of attempts to arrange alternative shipping routes in the Strait of Hormuz, one of the most important trade and energy routes in the world. About a week ago, the Revolutionary Guards announced that the costs of the strait will be recovered by the government of the Islamic Republic for 60 days. In practice, this is a continuation of Iranian declarations claiming that they have Iranian sovereignty over the management of the Strait of Hormuz, even though it is an international waterway, and even though, as part of the ceasefire, Iran agreed to allow free movement through the strait. The Iranian statement also said that there are certain safety hazards along the strait route, and that regarding other matters, including mine clearing, the necessary steps will be taken in accordance with Section 5 of the Memorandum of Understanding. Yesterday, according to a Saudi diplomat source, several sanctions of the memorandum, and especially the interpretation given to them by Iranian officials, are raising serious concerns in Riyadh. According to him, the Saudis delivered two central messages to the White House. The first is the Strait of Hormuz must remain completely open with no transit fees and no Iranian threat. The second, Iran must commit in writing to refrain from attacking Gulf states, a commitment that would be backed by international sanctions and serve punishment if violated. The source added that President Donald Trump's statements in the issue of the fees are a direct result of the Saudi appeal. In a post published on June 24 on Truth Social, Trump wrote, "Iran has informed the United States that no fees, insurance charges, or other charges will be collected by Iran for ships passing through the Strait of Hormuz. If this information is false, the negotiations will end immediately. Trump declared that Iran is not collecting fees from ships passing through the Strait of Hormuz. Furthermore, the President of the United States claims that Iran has still not received any funds from the frozen assets. According to him, the United States will release part of Iran's money, which remains under full Washington control, only for the purchase of corn, wheat, soybeans, and additional agricultural products from American farmers and ranchers. The White House emphasized that the Iranian people are desperately in need of food, and that the United States will be the only source of this supply. And while the Pentagon is requesting tens of billions of dollars to fund the continuation of the fighting, President Trump is facing almost total Democratic opposition. And growing question is, what will happen if the Republican Party will join the Democrats in voting against these requests? But then came a turn. The United States Senate reversed its decision and voted against stopping the war in Iran. One day after approving the move, the Senate voted again, and this time rejected the proposal to limit the administration's actions against Iran. The President of the United States welcomed the vote and said, "This vote puts Iran on notice." And Trump is also revealing a dramatic behind-the-scenes detail from the war against Iran. According to him, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan could have joined the confrontation, perhaps even on Iran's side, but stayed out after a direct appeal from him. In a meeting at the White House with NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, Trump was asked about his relations with Erdogan and about the possible visit to Turkey. The American president chose to answer through the war. "I like him. He's my friend. And he stayed out of the war with Iran," Trump said. And then he added the truly significant sentence. He was a leading candidate to enter the war with Iran, maybe even on Iran's side, because he's not a big fan of Israel. "I asked him to stay out of it, and he stayed out of it." Trump claimed that Chinese President Xi Jinping also avoided international intervention after a similar request from him. According to him, China had clear interest in intervening because of its dependencies on oil from the region, but Xi also stayed out. In other words, Trump is presenting himself not only as the person who managed the war against Iran, but also as the person who prevented it from becoming a much wider war, with Turkey and China inside this game. Oil, it seems, is reshaping the dialogue and the process between the United States and Iran, because after decades of confrontation, the United States took a step that until recently was considered almost unimaginable. This is allowing the Iranian oil to return to the international market for a period of 60 days. But despite the temporary sanctions and the exemptions, Iran is still struggling to sell oil truly freely. This situation could turn China's independent refineries into the main customer, and perhaps the only customer of Iranian oil. And while the negotiations with Iran move forward, U.S. Central Command, CENTCOM, announced that it eliminated in an airstrike in northwestern Syria a senior terrorist in the ISIS terrorist organization, Ali Hussein el-Ulu. In a statement published by CENTCOM on X, it said that the United States remained committed to rooting out the remaining remnants of ISIS in order to ensure its lasting defeat. And has the online terrorist campaign of the Revolutionary Guards reached its end, or is this terror campaign still ongoing? Iran is confirming for the first time that Yahya Husseini Panjaki, the man behind one of the most active and dangerous hacker groups against Israel, was eliminated in a targeted strike during the latest war. Panjaki, who led the Handala group, was responsible for a series of hacks into the cell phones of senior Israeli officials, including Naftali Bennett and former IDF Chief of Staff Herzi Halevi. And like every person who harms Israel and enters the IDF's crosshairs, the hourglass begins to run against him. All the details in this report. And is Syria the nightmare of Iran and Turkey? Ahmed el-Shara now stands at a decisive crossroad. He can enter Dakhia with his forces and take revenge on Hezbollah, but then Damascus could be hit by missiles from Iran. Erdogan will be forced to intervene, and the entire Middle East could ignite. In Saudi Arabia, reports say that the Hamas terrorist organization is trying to insert itself and its issue of Gaza into the talks between the United States and Iran as well. A Hamas source said that the organization expects a significant Iranian role in the negotiations. According to the report, the equation created by Lebanon, Israel, and Iran has caused Hamas to try to exploit the opportunity, and meanwhile, the IDF's fighting in Lebanon continues. Israel's defensive minister confirmed that the state will not withdraw its forces from southern Lebanon, even if the United States required and requested it. The statement comes while Israel and Lebanon are holding a new round of talks in Washington around the proposal backed by the United States. According to the proposal, Israel will withdraw from certain areas under its control in Lebanon and transfer them to the Lebanese army, while maintaining a security buffer zone along the border. But Israel argues that there is a need to continue maintaining a presence in southern Lebanon in order to deter threats from the Hezbollah terrorist organization. The talks in Washington on an Israeli withdrawal from southern Lebanon have run into disagreements. Disagreements over the conditions of the withdrawal, the role of the Lebanese army, and the dismantling of Hezbollah infrastructure. So look, Israel is being accused of hardening its conditions, but we have to defend ourselves from the terrorist organization that wants and tries to destroy all of us here in Israel. And quietly, under the cover of the ceasefire, Iran is rebuilding terrorist infrastructure in Judea and Samaria. Despite the relative quiet in the area, the IDF is identifying increased Iranian efforts to advance attacks and is reinforcing its forces. Tehran is exploiting the apparent closing of the Lebanese front and redirecting resources to another area, Judea and Samaria. The method? Directing operatives from Turkey, funding through crypto, and smuggling weapons. A senior security official warns any single local incident could lead to an outbreak. And in Sweden, they are warning the Revolutionary Guards are recruiting terrorists on our soil even these days. This comes after a series of Iranian-directed attacks that were thwarted in Northern Europe. All the details coming up very short in this report. So, as you can see, we have a lot ahead of us. So let's dive into the details. I'm Yair Pinto. Mati Shoshani is not with us today because he's in a conference against anti-Semitism, and we wish him success. We are here on Boots on the Ground, bringing you the whole truth about what's happening in Israel, about the war against the Revolutionary Guards in Iran, which is the head of the crumbling axis of evil in the Middle East. And just before we begin, I want to call on you to continue spreading the truth. Share our content with as many people as possible. Click the subscribe button. Most importantly, do not forget to look for me, Yair Pinto, and for Mati Shoshani on our social media accounts to get a view through our eyes of what it's like to live in Israel under war. We invite you to take part in something real, something rooted in the land and in our hearts. The Rebuild Israel campaign continues, bringing life back to Israel's north. So along Israel's northern border, an area that is marked by war, displacement, and loss, we are planting an apple orchard, not just as a symbol for a single moment, but as part of a long-term commitment to rebuild what was damaged. So this apple orchard is more than just agriculture. It creates jobs for local families. It helps communities return and rebuild. And it sends a clear message to the people of Israel: you are not alone. When you donate, you're not just giving, you're actually rebuilding, and you're planting a tree, 2 trees, 3 trees, as many trees as you can in the future of Israel. So your support is putting trees in the ground, it restores livelihoods, and it transforms land that is scarred by war into a land that grows again. This is how renewal takes root. This is how Israel rebuilds after war. So join us in restoring the north and strengthening the future of the land of Israel. Go now to tbn.org/rebuildisrael. Again, that's tbn.org/rebuildisrael, or call 800-804-7895. That's 800-804-7895. 7895. Rebuild the land, restore hope, bless the future. Now let's continue with the news, because here in Israel, we are fighting on multiple fronts. And the front that nobody's talking about, which is the one that is harming us the most, is the front of sharing the truth. So please help us by hitting the subscribe button on TBN Israel, and look us up on our social media accounts, Yair, Pinto, and Mati Shoshani. And let's get back to the news, because the Revolutionary Guard sent a direct warning this morning into the hearts of the sea. In the Strait of Hormuz, which is one of the most important passages in the world, they announced that safe passage will be allowed only through routes approved by Iran. Shocking. The new route off the coast of Oman was described in Tehran as unacceptable and dangerous, and vessels that do not follow the Iranian instructions, so they threaten, will be dealt with. The question now is simple. Did the ceasefire really open Hormuz, or did Iran only replace an open blockade with a quieter form of control? Because while the headlines around the world are talking about diplomacy, a memorandum of understanding, and follow-up talks, something completely different is happening on the ground. The maritime traffic jam in the Persian Gulf is beginning to loosen, but not because the risk has disappeared. It is loosening carefully, ship by ship, through narrow routes, under security guarantees, and other Iranian threat hovering over every captain who enters the strait. The United Nations Shipping Agency announced an operation to evacuate about 11,000 sailors and around 600 ships that were stranded in the area because of the war between the United States and Iran. The operation is being carried out in coordination with Iran, with Oman, with the United States, and international shipping officials. The plan allows the use of 2 shipping lanes through Hormuz in coordination with Oman. But pay attention to the important detail. Even when the ships begin to move, the Iranians are still talking as if the strait is in their hands. So about a week ago, the Revolutionary Guards announced that the cost of the Strait of Hormuz will be covered by the government of the Islamic Republic of Iran for 60 days. This is not only an economic statement, it is a political statement. Iran is trying to create the impression that it is not only allowing passage, but granting permission to pass. That is why the pressure came from the Gulf. Riyadh is demanding that the strait remain completely open, without fees, without transit charges, and without the Iranian threats. The Saudis are also demanding a written commitment that Iran will not attack Gulf states. And if it violates that commitment, it will face international sanctions and serve punishment. Trump tried to close that point with a clear post. According to him, Iran informed the United States that no fees, insurance charges, or other payments will be collected from ships passing through the Strait of Hormuz. Then he added a warning. If this information turns out to be false, the negotiations will end immediately. In other words, the White House also understands that this story is not only about ships. It is a test of credibility. If Iran collects money, threatens, or dictates shipping routes as if these were its waters, the agreement begins to crack very quickly. And at the same time, Washington has already given Tehran something tangible. The United States temporarily approved the purchase and the sale of crude oil, petroleum products, and petrochemicals originating in Iran until August 21st. For decades, oil was one of America's central pressure tools against the Iranian regime. Now that tool is being loosened, at least temporarily. Iran is already trying to exploit this window. The National Iranian Oil Company has begun approaching refineries in Asia and offering supply. But here comes Tehran's problem. Most of the major buyers did not wait for it. Refineries in India have already secured supply until the end of August. In Japan, there are still concerns about legal, insurance, and banking obstacles. Many businesses do not want to enter a deal that may disappear in 2 months. So who can buy? Mainly China's independent refineries, the so-called teapots, which took for cheap oil, and then China itself, which needs oil both for processing and for filling strategic reserves. And meanwhile, the amount of Iranian oil at sea has jumped. According to the shipping tracking data, within 48 hours, about 6 million barrels were added to the volume of Iranian crude oil floating at sea, bringing the total to around 126 million barrels. About half is already near Asia, and the other half is moving in that direction. That sounds like an Iranian victory, but it is also an Iranian problem, because oil at sea is not money in the bank. To turn it into revenue, it needs buyers, insurance, banks, payments, a port that is willing to receive the cargo, and a company that is not afraid of getting stuck facing sanctions the day after August 21st. And here comes another story that tells us a lot about the situation inside Iran, because in recent days, severe disruptions were recorded in the electronic services of several of the country's largest banks, Mille, Tajerat, Sadarat, and the Export Development Bank. The authorities in Iran, they spoke about damage to assured communications infrastructure. But for an ordinary citizen in Tehran, it looked much simpler. The payment terminal at the supermarket does not work. The ATM is off. The pharmacy is stuck. The gas station shows error messages, and the municipality cannot process transactions. Was it a cyber attack? Was it the collapse of a worn-out banking system? Is the regime hiding something deeper? Right now, there is no final answer. But when the banks are stuttering, the oil is looking for buyers, and the regime is asking for relief. This is the picture of a country fighting both outside and inside. And now we move to Washington, because that is where the second battle is taking place. Trump asked Congress for an additional budget and a package of $86.6 billion. About $16 billion of that is intended to cover the costs of the war. The Pentagon is requesting $21 billion for the purchase of additional ammunition, and another $4 billion for a new satellite program that would allow tracking of aerial targets from space. Testimony given to Congress indicated that the cost of the war with Iran has already reached around $29 billion. And that is before all the future costs, including the reconstruction of the American bases that were damaged in the Iranian attacks. Trump's problem is that the war is no longer only against Iran. It is also against Congress. Democrats are almost completely opposed to additional funding. Even inside the Republican Party, voices are beginning to ask what the objective is, how much it will cost, and how this ends. 4 Republican senators have already joined the Democrats in a symbolic move surrounding war powers. It does not stop the American military immediately, but it marks a political crack. And still, Trump presents himself as the man who prevented a wider regional war. According to him, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan could have entered the war, maybe even on Iran's side, but stayed out of it after a direct request from him. Trump said that Chinese President Xi Jinping also stayed out of the campaign, despite China's dependence on oil from the region. Even Putin, according to him, did not intervene. It's not clear what that entire claim is based on, but it is clear that Trump is trying to project that I did not only fight Iran, I prevented the war from becoming a global explosion. And just before we continue, I want to call on you to keep spreading the truth. Share this report with as many people as possible. Click on the subscribe button, and most importantly, look for us, share these videos, and pray. Because we are here to show you up close the real life of what's happening in Israel, this war, and what you need to know in order to pray for the situation. Because prayer works, believe me. And now, while everyone is looking at Hormuz, the United States continues to operate in another arena as well. United States Central Command announced that in an airstrike in northwestern Syria, Ali Hussein el-Alawi, a senior ISIS terrorist, was eliminated. The American statement was sharp. The United States will continue to uproot the remnants of ISIS in order to ensure its lasting defeat. This elimination is important for 2 reasons. First, it shows that the United States is still capable of carrying out military action in the Syrian arena, even while it is deep in negotiations with Iran. Second, It comes as ISIS is trying to return to public awareness, including calls for its supporters to carry out attacks around the 2026 World Cup in the United States. American authorities emphasize that there is currently no concrete information about a planned attack, but the threat exists. Israel, according to the reports, also struck another area of the Iranian war, which is the digital arena. Iran confirmed for the first time that Yahya Husseini Panjaki, the man who led the hacker group Handala, was eliminated in a targeted strike during the war. Handala was one of the most active cyber groups against Israel. It hacked and published information from the phones of senior Israeli officials, including Naftali Bennett, IDF Chief of Staff Herzi Halevi, Tzachi Breverman, and other figures in Israel's security and political systems. The meaning is clear. From Israel's perspective, someone who carries out terrorism against Israeli citizens and senior officials is not protected just because he's sitting behind a keyboard. But Iran is not operating only at sea. They're operating also in oil in banks and in the cyberspace. And it is trying to move all areas at the same time. And in Judea and Samaria, not far from where I'm sitting, the security establishment is identifying an Iranian effort to rebuild terrorist infrastructure under the cover of the ceasefire. Tehran is taking advantage of the apparent closing of the Lebanese arena and redirecting resources to the closest territory to the heart of Israel. The method is familiar. Direction of operatives from Turkey, funding through crypto, weapon smuggling through Israel's eastern border, which is Jordan, and the remote transfer of know-how in raids across Judea and Samaria. Large quantities of agricultural fertilizers that were also recently confiscated, and a civilian material that can be used to produce weapons. The IDF and the Shin Bet are now focusing on terror funds, asset seizures, and warning visits to former security prisoners who returned to Nablus, Tulkarem, Hebron, and Ramallah. The main concern is not only a single attack. The concern is an infiltration through the seam line that will create a copycat effect and open a broader wave of escalation. That's why the IDF is expected to reinforce the sector with 2 additional battalions in northern Samaria. A senior security official described it this way: every isolated incident could lead to an eruption. And in Europe, the same method is working in different versions. In Sweden, officials are warning that the Revolutionary Guards are continuing to recruit terrorists, even now after the Memorandum of Understanding. In recent months, arrests were reported in Sweden, Denmark, and Norway. The suspects plan to strike Jewish, Israeli, and American targets, synagogues, embassies, and other sensitive sites. The recruitment is carried out through local gangs. Iran offers money, and the gangs provide dirty hands. This is how the Iranian regime tries to maintain plausible deniability, not Iranian soldiers, not Iranian flags, but organized crime receiving a mission from Tehran. Now we come to Lebanon, because this is where the security part of the entire story is being tested. Israel and Lebanon are holding talks in Washington about the possibility of a partial Israeli withdrawal from southern Lebanon. The central idea is pilot zones. The IDF withdraws in a limited and controlled area and way. The Lebanese army is entering that area, and then the Americans are supervising, and then they check whether Hezbollah returns to that area or not. So on paper, it sounds organized, but on the ground, it's much more dangerous, because Israel is demanding that the Lebanese army dismantle Hezbollah infrastructure, destroy military sites, and prove that it can prevent the return of terrorists, of weapons, of anti-tank missiles, of drones, and communications infrastructure. In Lebanon, there is strong opposition. Some Lebanese officers fear that their army is being dragged into an internal confrontation with Hezbollah. Hezbollah has already sent a message that it is not bound by the results of the talks in Washington. From its point of view, it will not withdraw before a full Israeli withdrawal. Israel, on the other hand, makes clear that it will not withdraw from southern Lebanon if that endangers the communities of the north, even if Washington asks it to. This is where Qatar enters the picture, because Israel is concerned about the possibility that Doha will receive a central role in the Lebanese arrangement. Qatar maintains ties with Hamas, with elements in the Iranian axis and with the American administration. If the Lebanese file is tied to the broader understandings between Washington and Tehran, Hezbollah may not be disarmed, but instead receive time, space, and legitimacy. That's exactly what Israel is trying to prevent. And within all of this, there is also a Syrian scenario that worries Iran, Turkey, and Hezbollah. Ahmed al-Shara, formerly al-Julani, formerly al-Qaeda, he sits in Damascus, the president of Syria, and looks towards Lebanon. On one side, he's under American and Saudi pressure to deal with Hezbollah from the Syrian direction. On the other side, he knows that if his forces enter the Lebanese Bekaa or the Dakheh and Beirut, it could turn into a wider Sunni-Shia war. Two Muslim sects that are fighting each other for hundreds of years. So his forces may not look like a regular Western army, but they are battle-hardened fighters from the civil war. They know guerrilla warfare, tunnels, munitions, and mountainous terrain, fighting against militias, but Hezbollah is not just another enemy. It is an organization that has received decades of training, weapons, and money from Iran. So if al-Shara moves through Homs and el-Qusayr towards the Bekaa, and if his loyalists in northern Lebanon join the pressure on the Dakheh, Hezbollah will find itself facing three areas. But then Iran may threaten Damascus with missiles. Turkey, which sponsors al-Shara, will have to decide whether it intervenes or not. And that's already a scenario that ignites the entire Middle East. And Hamas, the Palestinian terrorist organization in Gaza, sees all of this and is trying to exploit the opportunity. The terrorist organization, Hamas, wants to insert Gaza into the agenda of the negotiations between Iran and the United States. The phone call between the Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi and senior Hamas official Bassem Naim came exactly in that context. Hamas understands that the equation in Lebanon has gained weight in the negotiations. Now, it wants Gaza to receive a place as well. But Israel and the United States are trying to separate the two fronts. From their perspective, Gaza is one file, Lebanon is another file, and the Iranian nuclear issue is another file. From Iran's perspective, everything is connected. And when Iran connects everything, it tries to turn every front into a bargaining chip. This is the real picture of this moment. Maritime traffic jam in Hormuz is loosening, but Iran is still threatening the routes. Oil is returning to the market, but buyers, they're afraid. The banks in Iran are stuttering, but the regime continues to fund terror. Trump is asking for tens of billions to continue the war, but Congress is starting to get tired. In Lebanon, they're talking about pilots and maps, and on the ground, Hezbollah is waiting to see who blinks first. So if the ceasefire was supposed to calm the Middle East, for now, it has only exposed how many fire points are still open. And the big question is who will be the first to break the new rules? Iran in Hormuz, Hezbollah in Lebanon, or Washington when it discovers that this agreement is costing it far more than it was promised. So keep spreading the truth, follow us, and most importantly, do not forget to click that subscribe button so that you stay tuned to the truth in real time and never miss another update of Boots on the Ground. Keep looking for us, Mati Shoshani and Yair Pinto, on our social media accounts to see life in Israel through our eyes. And pray for the people of Israel, for the situation, for the IDF soldiers in Lebanon, for the people of Iran, for the people of Lebanon. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem. We'll see you again on our second report tomorrow.
Hello, this is Mati here in Jerusalem with TBN Israel.
This is Yair Pinto from TBN Israel here in Jerusalem. TBN Israel is keeping viewers informed with Israel-focused news, culture, and what God is doing in this land.
Support TBN Israel today online at tbn.org/Israel. Thank you.